The final trend that I'll talk just a minute about is what I'm referring to as the prevalence of personal. And so we're seeing a move towards personal devices. This is a trend that's been building over time, and I think will come to play quite significantly this year at CES. If you look back to those photos I showed you of 1967 CES, you saw a variety of what one might have considered at the time consumer electronic appliances, things like televisions, radios, things that were enjoyed in a group setting, things that functioned and operated the same for each user. So if I come in to a room and somebody's viewing television, 10 years ago I had the exact same experience for the most part that they did. Maybe I had a slightly different viewing angle, but for the most part I watched the same content, I heard the same audio stream, I had the very same experience that they were having. And we had a lot of these devices. Radio is another great example. When I play radio in my vehicle or in a room, everyone, for the most part, has a very similar experience. They listen to the same music, they have the same general experience. And over the last couple of years, that has started to evolve towards more personal devices. Tablets, smartphones, MP3 players, all of that building towards this move to very unique devices. And I would argue that if you take a look at tablets and smartphones, even if you and I have the exact same model, the exact same carrier, we have very different experiences because we've been able to customize them with apps. We've been able to customize them and make them our own, so they behave in a way that is specific to us. And so that's a big story that will play out over the next couple of years. Manufacturers are supporting this as well by creating and bringing to market devices that can be customized to the end user, services that can be customized to the end user, so that each individual user is getting a very unique experience. So I always read at least 30 articles heading into CES highlighting that Apple isn't exhibiting at CES. I think everybody knows this. And I'm not sure if, to me, that's the big story. Whether it's iOS, whether it's Android, whether it's a different operating system, the key to me is that we're building a hardware core. And so if you look back in the history of technology and you look at platforms, platforms come along at different points in time in the evolution of technology. So you go back to automobiles, for example. Henry Ford built the first automobile. He was famous for saying, what? You can have any color Model T as long as it's black. Right? His focus was not on customizing the experience, but on creating a very good replacement for the horse and buggy. And so he focused on just building the vehicle and not on all of the other attributes of that experience. In so much that early on in the automotive history, they left that DIN slot to others. So people could come in, access that DIN slot, they could take advantage of that 12-volt power, and entire industries were built around that hardware core. That DIN slot in that radio became that hardware core, and we built distribution networks, we built entire retail distribution networks, we built entire industries focused on that hardware core. Computers in the 70s and 80s did the exact same thing. They were standardized just enough to create a hardware core, and then you had everything else around it that others could come in. We built entire distribution networks, we built CompUSAs and Fry's and all of these other retailers that were focused on that computer industry and that hardware core, and we built a plethora of accessories around that hardware core. Keyboards, mice, you name it. Software certainly played an important role. And so when I look at smartphones, while I know we love to focus on market share and who's exhibiting and who's not, to me the much broader story and the more relevant story to consumers is that this hardware core has developed. And so the other thing we love to talk about is how much something is open versus closed. But if you look back in the history of platforms, it didn't really matter if it wasn't a binary issue, whether it was open or closed. It was, is it open enough that other players can come in, take advantage of that hardware core? Can we build industries around it? And that's today what you're seeing in the smartphone category. I would argue that we've already built significant retail distribution. Apple alone has roughly 300 or so stores. if you look at include all of the carrier stores and other stores that are catering to the smartphone category, you can see we've built entire distributions. I would argue that among the major consumer electronics retailers, wireless is the new loss leader. It's the new traffic driver. Where we used to offer physical media to get consumers into the store, we now highlight what's happening in mobile to get consumers into the store. And so what will take place over the next 4 or 5 days is the leveraging of this hardware core to take advantage and build out this industry. So just some examples of things you'll see over the next few days. Accessories galore. If you go through North Hall and you go through the iLounge, you're going to see a variety of accessories, fashionable accessories like bags and stands. Here you see camera attachments so that you can start to customize that camera experience. Everyone has the same optics on that hardware, but now you can take advantage and customize it. If that's the attribute of that device that you want to scale, that you want to change, that you want to adjust, that you want to personalize, seeing devices allow you to amp the music too for the devices as well. The use of sensors, we're going to see sensors deployed on these devices. I talked about sensors getting to a point where they've become inexpensive so we can start to waste them across devices. So just taking a look at some of those devices you see at the bottom of your screen. In the middle there you've got a video recorder that looks like any other video camera except for that it's got sensors built in. So it can capture things like speed. And so your video stream that you record is very unique. It's very specific to the experience that you had because of those sensors. If somebody goes back and makes that exact same video feed, it's going to be very different because of that embedded information. Health and fitness is also clearly an area where we see manufacturers taking advantage of that hardware core. The iPhone 4S was the first smartphone to launch with Bluetooth 4.0 capabilities. And you're going to see that become a big story here at CES as devices taking advantage of that low power attributes and capabilities of Bluetooth 4.0 to launch a plethora of health and fitness related devices. Taking advantage of that information that's already being produced but hasn't been captured in a systematic way and capturing it in a very systematic way. Just some other trends in closing. I think one thing to watch for is indoor navigation. We're going to see a lot of examples of indoor navigation. Watch for the integration of social, Blockbuster, and you'll see that in the Dish booth. We'll be focusing on how to integrate in that social experience, and you'll see other examples of that across the show floor. I just want to talk in closing too about some of the things to think about as you look at the show floor. So often we're focused on the things we see at CES and having them show up in the marketplace in 2012, be commercially viable in 2012, and commercially successful. And if they're not, then we tend to want to write them off very quickly. I would argue that you're going to see many things this year at this CES, just like you would at any other CES, that will take many years until they ultimately become commercially successful, commercially viable products. You see, 3D is a great example of a product that is still very early on in its adoption cycle. So whether it becomes something full-fledged that everybody adopts, whether it only becomes a feature in a certain number of products, it is, to me, secondary. The key is that it's still very early on. We've had 3D for 100+ years. We've never had it as a home entertainment technology. So it's just now becoming introduced as a home entertainment technology. Just one thought on television, because television is such a strong category here at CES. I wanted to walk you through the last decade of television and show you what we've seen and some of the things I think we'll see in 2012, but ultimately also beyond. So some of the things we see on the show floor over the next couple of days will not be commercially successful, will not be commercially viable in 2012. It'll take years for many things to happen, for consumers' appetite and interest and knowledge to increase, for their understanding to increase, for prices to come down. All of those things will unfold over the next couple of years. You step back to